جزاكم الله خير. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء المرسلين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب رب العالمين صلوات الله وسلام عليه. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his final messenger. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I first want to thank IOK, Sister Iman and Sheikh Nu'man for inviting me here to talk about an important topic, and those that didn't make it here because they thought I'm going to be talking about something. I'm actually going to surprise you here today with what you have an idea, you may have an idea of what I'm going to be talking about, but I'm actually going to be talking about something a little bit different but much more important as it relates to the problem of pornography. So my topic and title is Leading by Example, Essential Habits Your Children Need You to Model to Navigate Digital Temptations. So as we get started, just to give you a little background and to appreciate where I'm coming from with my presentation here today, I just want to talk a little bit about Purify Your Gaze and what we do there. So we've created an 8-step model and an online platform for Muslims that can leverage professional support, peer support. We have an online library, an addiction recovery training library, and we have a behavioral tracking software that they can leverage on their journey to change and healing from pornography and sexual addiction. Alhamdulillah, like Sister Iman said, I launched this in 2009. It really picked up in 2010, and alhamdulillah, we've served 53,000 Muslims that have leveraged our resources, and more than 1,800 have been a part of our program, alhamdulillah. A little bit about me. So I'm a married man, alhamdulillah. I'm a stepfather to 2 teenagers and a father to two young ones. Professionally, I am a strategic interventionist. I was trained by Anthony Robbins and world-renowned psychotherapist Chloe Madonis. And I've been working with Muslims for the past 10 years on a myriad of goals, challenges, and helping them with their lives and relationship. And it's from this experience, I had personal encounters with clients, and I didn't see any available options within the Muslim community. So passion for entrepreneurism, wanting to do something bold, founded Purify Your Gaze, and the rest is history, alhamdulillah. So I wanted to start our conversation here by sharing a story about a father who reached out to me about 1.5 years ago because his 3 teenage boys were struggling with pornography. The father and mother had tried to put restrictions around the internet, and it was a game of cat and mouse, or robber and policeman. They put restrictions online, and then the kids, with their wise maneuvering, find loopholes. They add more restrictions, and then they find more loopholes. And they couldn't control this, and they try to put more and more restrictions. The mother had found the eldest had downloaded pornography to his computer, and she was enraged, and she scolded him, and she shouted at him. And the father wanted to have a heart-to-heart with his son to see what's going on and why is he doing this? How did this start? So they had a conversation. And the son said that he was introduced to pornography by a classmate at his school when he was 12 on his mobile phone. Curiosity in that age of puberty, he started looking it up online, and it became a habit, a secret habit that nobody knew about, and it carried on for 4 years. And as they had this heart to heart, the son started to cry, and he's like, I've been making dua to Allah to help me change, and I actually wish I could have gotten caught much earlier. So he's in a lot of pain, and he's been wanting this help, he's been wanting to change. And his father advised him, he said, son, this is a very unhealthy habit. You need to abstain from this, you need to stop this, because it's not good for your well-being, it's not good for your future. And the son made a promise to his father that he wouldn't do this again. A few weeks later, the mother found graphic pictures under their son's pillow. So I share this story. I've heard this story many times. I've worked with teenagers who have struggled with pornography. I've had parents come for me asking for advice. The reality is pornography has always been around. It's not a new phenomenon. I'm sure we've all been exposed to it at some time in our life. What's changed though is that it could actually be with you today wherever you go, literally walking with you in your pocket, right? On a PlayStation, on the Xbox One, through before you had to get on the desktop, now it's on your personal mobile phone. So that's really been a game changer in terms of making this widely accessible. And the most vulnerable population are the youth. Just a statistic: 1 in 5 internet searches online are for sexual media. So just think about that. And here's a fact that many of us may not like to hear. 90% of the youth by the age of 16 will be exposed to pornography, will be exposed inadvertently, whether they're using something, they're doing a school project, whether it's from a friend, a classmate, they accidentally find it because an older member of the family is using it. It's going to happen. And a friend of mine on social media, he made a funny post. He said, well, it's a real post. He said, if you are in denial that your children will not be exposed to pornography, take out your hand, look at it, and start slapping yourself. So we have to come to grips with the reality on the ground. The harms of pornography are real, and here's a short list. And I tried to have this as it pertains to the youth. Now, if you don't know, there's been a lot of research in neuroscience on the effects of pornography and how it actually rewires the brain's reward and pleasure system, much like any other hard drug will do. And over time, the desensitization happens where the user needs more and more hardcore material to be able to achieve that same arousal. It's responsible for failed relationships. It's responsible for school struggles. It's responsible for body image insecurities. There's been a popular article that's been going around. I don't know if you guys have seen it shared most recently, but they wrote an article about young teenage boys and the phenomenon that is taking place where they are acting out what they have been watching on via pornography on their girlfriends in school, right? So the stuff that they're watching is shaping their beliefs about relationships, about sex, and it's creating, there's sexual bullying online, the pressure around sexting. Regular users suffer from esteem issues, depression, anxiety as a result of their use. And there's a much larger list, and there's a much larger list. And we've seen, working at Purifier Gaze, the harms of this. There's a lot of heartache. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain around as a result of the use of pornography. And we need to encourage safe practices with our children around technology and media. We need to continue to communicate about the harms of pornography and the myths surrounding it. Like, that one of the common myths is that it's not harmless. It's not harmful. And particularly amongst Muslims, that this is something temporary that I'll do, and when I get married, I'll be able to give this up. It's the lesser of two evils. We need to be able to introduce and talk about sexuality in a positive way and an age-appropriate way with our children. We need to be able to model intimacy and love and strong marriages to our children. And we need to make it easier for the youth to get married. So if this is the topic initially is about pornography and its harms, this is my presentation, and I can end it right here. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. All this information and research, if you haven't been exposed to it, I encourage you to read it. It's widely available on Google. But what I'm here to talk about today is something that is not as widely known, but much, much more important as it pertains to pornography addiction. Pornography, like other drugs, is only potentially destructive. It's only potentially destructive. By itself, it's not destructive. For it to catch fire, for it to be destructive, it needs to find the right host. It's a very, very important distinction here, because there's all this, we need to talk about pornography. We need to talk about the harms of pornography. But pornography is only potentially destructive. It's only potentially destructive. What makes it destructive is when it latches on the right host. It takes two to tango, as they say. I shared this fact earlier, 90% of children will be exposed to pornography, yet most children do not grow up to become pornography addicts or sex addicts. So again, pornography is only potentially destructive. So what I'm here to talk about are those children who do become addicted in 5, 10, 15, 20 years as a result of their struggles, as a result of their pain, need to reach out for professional support like Purify Your Gaze. What happened in their life, their early life? What went wrong? What could their parents have done to have prevented this? And again and again and again, with the clients that I've personally worked with, I've heard, number one, they weren't able to talk to their parents about their pornography use, but number two, there's so much happening at home that contributed to them becoming vulnerable and susceptible at a later age where this became a dependence. Now, there are many different factors that contribute to the development of an addiction, so it's hard to generalize here, but I'm going to try to draw upon the common patterns that we've seen at Purify Your Gaze that have made users or made individuals susceptible or vulnerable at the early and later parts of their life. And most importantly, I want to discuss the important elements, the important habits, the things that our children need to see from us in order to safely navigate digital temptations or temptations in general, but most importantly so that they can thrive in their life and make important and right decisions that will help them in their relationships. Because that's at the end of the day, we want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to thrive. So let's talk about what really matters. Pornography is just the surface problem. It's a manifestation of what is deeper. So let's talk about what you and I can be doing to help model that right example for our children. And I want to go back to the story of the father that came and reached out for help. So he shared he shared what was happening with his kids. And I asked them in the conversation, so tell me about your family dynamic, tell me about your marriage, what's going on there. And he said, he admitted, the past few years, we've struggled a bit financially, and I've kind of checked out, and I've been focused, preoccupied with my career. And I'll actually share his quote and read it to you. He said, I was too consumed and worried about my own things to worry about my children that much. We had some financial challenges for a few years that had me consumed with getting my career right and figured out. I would leave the education to my wife and telling them off if they got bad grades, and that was about it. I was a bit of a workaholic, and in the evening I'd come home, sort of put myself down in front of the TV and have food and just want to close myself off. I take a lot of blame for not speaking to my sons as much as I should. Where they formed any unsavory habits, I was unaware of these things. Right? So anytime you have a problem or something that you don't like, there's something that's creating the problem. There's something, we could focus on the fact that, their kids have access to media and a technology component, the internet, but what is creating the environment for them to want to go to these behaviors? And as he was talking, just a smile came on my face, and my intuition was screaming to me loud and clear. And I told the brother, how diplomatic do you want me to be? I can sugarcoat it, I can, we could just talk about your kids and what they need, or I could tell you really what you need or what your family needs so that you all get better. And he said, please tell me what I need to hear. And what I told him was, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And whatever, we could spend this next 30 minutes, next hour, talking exactly about what your kids need to heal, what your kids to overcome their struggles, the lessons or the objectives that they would need to develop as young men. But the reality is, it would be a tragedy if these young boys, these young men, were to develop these things and their father doesn't have the qualities and is not walking the talk, is not serving as a leader. You need to be able to model, you need to be able to develop these very same skills that your children need as well. And it's not that the father was struggling with pornography himself. I asked him that. But the reality was he was not emotionally present. And he exhibited the addictive personality that is present, whether it's with pornography, whether it's with workaholism, whether it's with someone who is plopped down in front of the TV or on their smartphone all the time. The problem is with the addictive personality. He was not modeling how to meet his needs, how to take care of himself in a positive and healthy way. And his absence at home emotionally was creating a vacuum for his kids. All this pressure, they had 4 kids, I believe, 4 or 5 kids, and all that pressure was on his wife. The wife cannot do it by herself. It takes the 2 parents to do a good job. And how could he ask his kids and talk about kids what it means to succeed as a man, what it means to thrive as a young adult, when he himself was not modeling that? And there's a whole saying that your actions are speaking so loudly that I can't hear you speaking. Right? So our actions and what we do, our kids are paying attention to it. And we have to really reflect and think about the example that we are setting, because that's what is remembered. We could be talking and preaching one thing, but if our actions are completely different, that lack of integrity is going to stand out loud and clear. And our kids notice, from a young age. And so a beautiful journey began with this father, and it wasn't that this father is doing a bad job. The way that I saw it was that this father was taking charge of his flock. As the Prophet ﷺ instructed, the men and women to take charge for their flock, to take charge of their family. And our objective was, we're going to develop the skills that you're going to teach your kids, right? So I can work with your kids, or I can work with you. And I want you to have the gift of being able to initiate your young men into adulthood. Because young men, young women cannot get to adulthood by themselves. They need someone to initiate them to becoming strong men and strong women. So this was our journey. It was a beautiful journey, and I'll talk a little bit about what we realized and what are some of the things we developed working together. But what I want to talk about right now here is just to introduce a concept called human needs psychology. And the reality is, human needs psychology says that we all have 6 essential needs. And these 6 essential needs govern our decision making. They explain why we do what we do. They are how we try to experience fulfillment in our life. They are how we try to avoid pain in our life as well. And here's an important distinction. Not all means of meeting one's needs are the same, right? So we all have the same 6 human needs, and we all are meeting these needs, but just because we're meeting these needs, the vehicle for meeting those needs are not the same. Some vehicles for meeting these needs are positive, are constructive, they feel good, they benefit those around us, and some vehicles for meeting these needs, they feel good, but in reality, they're not good for us, they're not good for our loved ones, and they're not good and not pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. And when we find a vehicle that meets three or more of our needs at a high level, a dependence is formed. So I want you to think about the practical psychology here as we try to understand why a kid would gravitate towards temptations. Forget the technology, one friend was telling me about, did you check out this new social media channel? And I was like, I've never even heard of that. It's hard to keep tabs over everything that's popping up these days. But what's more important than that is understanding what governs or what influences one's decisions and the psychology behind that. And as adults, we tend to gravitate towards two of these needs. Two of these needs, of these six needs, are more primary for us than any other needs. But we need all six needs to be fulfilled and to be happy. And our children, as our primary caretakers, need to meet all six of these needs. Our children need to meet all six of these needs. So what I'm going to be doing at this point, inshallah, I'm going to be going over the six needs. I'm going to invite your participation. So can I invite your participation, inshallah? All right. So the first need, and as you go through these six needs, try to think of yourself, which of the six needs are my primary needs? Think of your children. What are their primary needs, or what do they gravitate towards, and how am I doing in terms of meeting their six needs? So the first of the six needs is a need for certainty. It's about having reliability, it's about having security, it's having predictability in one's own life. Being able to have that sense of predictable outcomes that take place. It could be peace of mind, it could be the environment at home, it could be what is happening from the schedule. We all need certainty in our life. So I want you to think here, I want you to think about our kids. Imagine the effect on a child's psychology if they have low certainty in their life. What are some examples, and I'll invite your participation here, what are some examples of low certainty in a child's life, or an environment of low certainty? How so? Okay. Okay. How does that conflict create uncertainty? Okay. Any other examples you can think of? They what? So they're worried about the future, anxiety? Okay. So the next need, we all have a need for certainty, but we also have a need for uncertainty. Uncertainty is the need, I call it the spice for life. The spice for life. We all need variety. We all need adventure. If everything was the same all the time, life would be boring, right? It would just be, be robotic, right? We're just going in, and some of us, that's our schedule. We go into work, come back, and it's very, zombie-like. So we need variety in our life. We need that thrill. We need that excitement in our life. So some other words, adventure, surprise, change, and that changes up that stagnation that could take place in our life. Now, if your child cannot meet their need for adventure and variety, what will be the effect of that? If they cannot meet their need for variety and adventure, how will they meet their need for variety and adventure? How? Yeah. Exactly. And at that young age, we gravitate towards making some rash decisions as youth, right? So it's not just that, but we need that excitement, we need that variety in our life. And if a child does not have that environment where they can safely experience thrill at a high level, if they can, safely experience that adventure at a high level, they're going to be looking to meet that need. And then there's the need for love and connection. Right? So some other words is to feel loved, to passion, warmth, tenderness, togetherness. We all have a need to belong. And from the clients that I've worked with, this is actually one of the core beliefs that many of the clients that I've worked with, at the back of their mind, it's a subconscious belief, but it is, am I actually loved? Am I actually loved? And there's this fear that if people were to know who I really am inside, I would be abandoned. So there's this missing dependence, this missing connection with the primary caregivers in their life. There's that missing warmth in their life. And what are the implications of our children growing up and deep down, they don't know if they're really loved, if they question that, and if their achievements mattered more than they do. Right? A lot of us become human doings rather than human beings. Our self-worth is measured by what we do and what we don't do, but not by our intrinsic worth. What if our children grow up with that feeling inside, or that belief inside, that doubt that I'm not sure if I really matter, I'm not sure if I'm really lovable? What will be the effect of that? And what are some parenting methods that can induce this belief that I talked about, where there's this doubt at a core level? What are some things some of the mistakes we as parents can do to induce that belief? Okay. Threatening that security as well. So if you do this and that, right, I'm going to give you something to cry about, or if you do this, I don't know you anymore, right? Disowning their kids or threatening, but it doesn't have to be that. A parent could be even subtle ways of doing it as well. The need for significance. So we all have a need for significance, to feel important and to have that pride, right? To be proud as a Muslim, to be proud as a human being is not a bad thing. I love the definition, is that humility is not thinking lesser of yourself. It's about thinking about yourself less, right? So if we grow up with a missing significance, or we don't feel confident about ourselves, how is that going to affect or color our decision-making abilities? So if we don't feel, if we're looking for significance, we're looking to feel significant, how can that color? Think of a peer pressure situation. How would the need for significance, or someone who doesn't feel significant, how would that color or make them vulnerable in a peer pressure situation? Okay. And something just to add, what we want to inculcate in our kids is not just to listen to us, but to listen ultimately to themselves, right? We want to instill these values, so at the end of the day, they grow up to become independent and they can think for themselves. And they're not adult children, right? They're still trapped thinking, looking for that significance from their parents, that they naturally have that significance inside. The next two needs are what are called the needs of the spirit, the need of the soul. And the next need is the need for contribution. And it's about living beyond yourself. It's about being able to give back, to be able to make a difference, to add value, to volunteer, to give back to something greater than yourself. Yeah, sure. If your child is put in experiences where they don't learn about, or they don't get to contribute, or they don't get to give back, or they don't learn about selflessness, what could be the implications of that? Okay, so there's self-centeredness. What else? Entitlement. Sister in the back. So now think about that in the context of an addiction. What when we think about an addiction, a person who is an addict, their choices are harming those around them, and they are disconnected from the consequences that their choices are having on not just themselves, but the people around them. There is this entitlement that fuels the addiction, right? There's this belief that I deserve this, I deserve this. So teaching or putting our children, or putting ourselves in a grounded place of giving back, contributing, allows us to think, or allows us to remember that our actions matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Zalzala, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil shall verily see it. And whoever does an atom's weight of a good shall verily see it. So our actions matter. We matter. What we can do can be done. We can be used for good. And finally is the need for growth. And here is where we are developing as human beings. We're learning. We're experiencing new skills. We are developing ourselves. And this is not just about learning knowledge, for example, in school and learning, about history. That's part of growth. But what we're talking about is developing in your spirit, developing in your soul. You as a human being, there is that personal development process taking place. And the reality is, whether it's our kids and whether it's ourselves, if we are not growing, we are dying. Right? So there's no in between. Right? We're either going up or we're going down. And the effects, the growth, that if we are not growing and if we are not contributing and we're not meeting our other needs, at the end of the day, we could be achieving things, but we're not going to feel fulfilled. We're not going to feel happy. Because progress, growth is what leads to happiness. It's not when we get to the end of our destination or just achieving the goals. Yes, that brings us happiness, but if we are growing along the way, even if we're making mistakes, which we'll undoubtedly make, if we are growing and we see that progress, that's going to build our esteem. That's going to lead us to feeling happy inside, no matter what the external situation may be. Now, imagine putting a child in a home environment where one or more of their primary needs are not reliably met. You have an emotionally absent parent, or a situation with the parents where they're not to provide that stability, that safety, or guidance. There's a repression of the individuality of the child, repression of the expression of emotions, a repression of the child's needs. The child in turn feels depressed, anxious, has chronic bad feelings, and there's a poor support system. It could be one of these five or all of these five, but you have the recipe for a child looking for the perfect fantasy escape. They're looking for the perfect fantasy escape. It could be pornography, it could be a relationship, it can be experimenting with drugs, whatever. They're ripe to look for that escape that's going to make them ultimately feel better. So take a few slides back. What did I say about pornography? Pornography is only what? Do you remember? Pornography is only potentially destructive. So take a vulnerable child coming from a background where their needs are not met, or an adult who has these wounds that are still inside, this big internal void, combined with the vehicle of pornography or sex or any experience that provides that temporal escape, that temporal pleasure to escape from life's realities that they cannot deal with. And there you have the perfect bad marriage, the ripe recipe for this to combust and for this relationship to pick up. So if you have a child in a situation, because they're supposed to be meeting their needs in the home, they're supposed to be meeting their needs with a primary caregiver. It could be from that stage or when they leave the home. If that's not there, if that vehicle, that healthy vehicle for connection, for significance, for certainty, for variety, for contribution, for growth is not there, we're all going to be looking for it. And when your needs are met, 3 or more needs are met at a high level, that's a precursor to an addiction or a dependence developing. And I wanted to share a quote from a client that was in our program, and he said, as I grew up, I learned to turn to porn and see it as a reliable friend for me that could be there for me when others couldn't or had let me down. It's the only thing that I know that allows me to feel better very quickly, very powerfully, in a way no one and nothing else can, every single time I ask it to. Right? So going back to this conversation with the father, and he had with his kids, and we're telling him, you should stop this because this is bad. But this is meeting the kid's needs. So how can you expect the child to stop if they have found a vehicle that's meeting their needs? That's why just to focus on abstinence, which is important, and part of that self-restraint, that self-control is important. But if a person is meeting their needs through this vehicle, we have to take that into consideration to see it's going to be a process, and they're going to have to learn some skills for them to be able to leave this dependency. So what you have with these, with this vacuum, with this void, are 2 things, mental health challenges or mental health concerns that make a person ripe, or there's that early life trauma or wounds, and they're not able to deal or cope with life in a healthy way. And it makes them, again, to look for that escape, to look for that vehicle that'll give them the ability to have that temporal pleasure. And what we need to do, so in our focus, I started out the presentation talking about the things that we need to be doing. We need to talk to our kids about how to safely use technology. We need to talk to our kids about the harms of pornography. We need to talk to our kids about setting boundaries with media. We need to talk to our kids about healthy sexuality. But again, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on. And what we have, the result of that, is adults who know right or wrong. So the positive that we instill the values, they know what is right or wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because we know something's right that we can stay away from it. So when we focus at what's beneath the iceberg, or what's beneath, we address the core of the matter, we address the underlying wounds. We lead by example. We help a child continually learn and develop skills. We create opportunities for our kids to meet their needs in a healthy way. The outcome that we get are adults with high emotional intelligence, adults with life and coping skills that can deal with challenges, that can solve problems. They're not, they have that resilience inside. And the Prophet ﷺ described the example of a believer like a tender plant, right? The wind comes and blows, and the plant is able to be flexible, sway with the plant. Whereas a person who doesn't have that faith is like a rigid tree, and when the wind blows, they fall down or it cracks. So when we inculcate and we develop these core life skills, it's not about just pornography anymore. It's about the greater temptations out there, and being able to put in our kids the necessary skills for them to be able to make those healthy decisions for themselves, and for them to be able to start their families on their own in a positive way, inshallah. So in our program at Purify Your Gaze, we call this, I talked about an 8-step model, and we call this the path to freedom. And these 8 steps are what we take our members through. It's what I took this father through. And I just wanted to go through these 8 steps and what they're about. Step number 1 is testify. We cannot change ourselves if we do not testify to our reality and our truth. If there's no problem, if we see no problem within ourselves or nothing needs to change, we're not going to change. So we have to get connected to see the cost of our choices, and we have to see what it is that needs to be changed. Number two, we need to make that change, not I should change, but I must change. We need to make that change a priority today. Step number three is connection. And here is where we encourage our members to develop that connection with themselves, where they understand themselves, they understand their human needs, they understand some of the things that may have happened in their life that contributed to where they're at today. And by understanding your patterns, you can see what your triggers, what's triggering your choices, and you can also see some of the core beliefs that you have that are influencing the decisions that you are making or you're not making. Step number four is having envisioning, setting a high purpose or vision for your life. And here is where you have something, in the Purifier Gates program, we call it the WWFF, what's worth fighting for. And what we encourage our members to do is actually sit down and come up with a 3 to 4 line statement where they get crystal clear about what is worth fighting for in their life. What makes life worth living? What makes life, in spite of the pain of right now, what makes it worth it for me to be able to remember it's going to be okay? And this is my cause. Because in reality, when we talk about growth, there's pain involved with growth. And one of the things we teach to our members is how to manage pain. Pain is necessary. Pain is necessary for growth, but suffering itself is optional. So growth, you can look at the pain involved, or you can see all the progress is happening. So when you have that higher vision to lift you up in spite of the difficulty of right now, is what is able to sustain you and help you continue those right choices when there are temptations around you. Step number 5 is abstinence, abstain. And here, this is where you may be wondering, okay, so where do you tell them pornography is haram? Or where do you tell them that they need to abstain from this? So we need to abstain, whether it's pornography, whether it's overeating, whether it's numbing out when we get home from work on our smartphones, whether it's working all the time. We need to abstain from those habits that are destructive for our well-being, destructive for our self-care, which is why we emphasize in our program it's not just about abstaining from pornography. A person can abstain from pornography and their addictive personality is in place. If the addictive personality is in place, they're just going to switch their addiction, go from one addiction to the next. So there has to be abstinence from those things that do not serve us or meet our needs in a positive way. And number 6 is enjoy, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put these prohibitions in our life, or He told us to stay from things, not so we can suffer. And if that's how we are, if we're living a life of rules and we are suffering, then we're not going to be able to enjoy it. And you may have heard of why dieting does not work, because you have to die along the way, right? So if it's all just pain and I can't enjoy it, I'm just going to, I'm just doing it because I have to, at some point you're going to burn out. So we need to be able to find healthy ways to experience joy. The 6 human needs we talked about, we work with our members and help them create a lifestyle where they can meet their needs consistently, reliably, at a very, very high level. Step number 7 is growth, and we talked about growth and the importance of it. So as a part of this journey, sometimes we have to upgrade the operating system. Sometimes we have to add patches. We have to learn new communication skills, learn new life skills, so we can better cope with those challenges that come ahead. And finally, step number 8 is measuring. And here, it's being able to stop and having that muhasaba. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, he said, حاسبوا قبل أن تحاسبوا حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. So take account of yourselves before you are taken into account. And we're getting to the end of the year, and everybody's going to set their New Year's resolutions. One of the things that happen with New Year's resolutions, it only happens once a year, right? So we get excited, rah, I'm going to achieve these goals, but then we don't even check in on our goals at all. So we actually have developed an application, a tracker called the self-care tracker, and where our members are able to measure and look at the data to see, how am I doing this week? How am I doing this month? And see, okay, I'm going down. I have to make a shift back and go to the right direction. And the result of this these 8 objectives or these 8 steps, the focus is not just rooting out the addiction, but also changing and addressing the addictive personality. Addressing the addictive personality that fuels or attracts any addictive outlet or vehicle. We're addressing the underlying factors that fuel one's unwanted behaviors. And lastly, we're equipping the individual with a vision, the lifestyles, and the tools to thrive in life, and also to be able to withstand those base temptations that may come along the way. And in reality, this is not just what the members in Purify Your Gaze need. We all need this education. We all need this transformation. Right? So I've grown so much working with my clients. Sometimes we're focusing on something. Whoa, I need to do that myself. I'm reminded by the clients that I work with. In reality, we all need these life skills. We all need to develop ourselves because, we know the obvious addictions. We know about pornography addiction. We know about alcoholism. We know about substance abuse. But there are other experiences that carry that addictive feel, and it has an effect on us, has an effect on our important relationships, and it holds us back from realizing our potential. So going through these 8 steps, the transformation journey that we take our members in addressing the addictive personality, and this father that I worked with, here are some of the essentials or the qualities that we help to transform. So step number 1, we help them transform from self-neglect to self-care. And what we mean by self-neglect is when there is a level of neglect, a level of heedlessness in taking care of ourselves. And I had a conversation with a client. We talked about self-care. He says, to be honest, I don't even know what that means. I was like, do you have any pets? He's like, yeah, I've got a cat. So I said, okay, so how do you know when your cat needs something? He said it'll come and it'll brush its head against me. It may even scratch me, and that points to me that, I need to feed it, or I need to let the cat outside. So I said, what about yourself? How do you know when you need to take some time out for yourself, and you're feeling a little bit anxious about something, or worried about something? To be honest, I don't. I'm just disconnected all the time. So when you have that level of awareness, and I'm going to talk about this later on from disconnection to presence, when you have that presence and you have that awareness of what's going on, you're able to see, okay, here are my needs. Our needs are fine. There's nothing wrong with our needs, but we need to find a healthy way to meet our needs. Moving from perfectionism to self-acceptance. We're setting ridiculously high standards for ourselves. We're motivating ourselves by negative self-talk. We're putting ourselves down, and that is the fuel that many of us carry inside when we're trying to achieve our goals. There isn't a positive voice inside. So we help our members to change that internal voice from criticism to one of acceptance to one of encouragement. Moving from isolation to intimacy and expression. Right? So there's another famous saying that goes around in the addiction recovery circles, that addictions thrive in isolation. And we talked about this home environment. If a person is disconnected from their home, they're isolated from their home, they're going to need a host to connect with. If they're isolated from connection, they're going to connect with this host, and they're going to form that relationship. So here we're encouraging the member. They may have had some wounds in their past where they've been put down about their feelings, and they grew up in a family home where emotions are not something we talk about, or it's okay to express emotions, to show emotions. So we help them express themselves vulnerably, embrace their vulnerability. Moving from self-reliance to vulnerability. And one of the things that happens in these homes where there is that missing certainty or that reliability, at some point the child loses trust in the primary caregivers. They lose trust that my parents can actually help take care of me. So therefore, I must take care of myself. And it's not a conscious decision that's made. It's a subconscious decision that's made where I no longer trust my parents. They don't know what's good for me. So here, and the ramifications of that can even happen on a spiritual level, where they close off and they're not turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for spiritual guidance. So moving from self-reliance to vulnerability, where, okay, maybe you may have had some wounds in the past that led you to closing off, but it's important that you have that vulnerability. And moving from indulgence to self-control. Step number 5 in the process was abstain. Right? So we have to abstain from those behaviors that we know that they're not good for us. We know that they're not good for our family members. Even though that we call them guilty pleasures, in the long run it's important that we step back and find better alternatives for these. Disconnection to presence. And if you were to ask me what is it we teach in our program, it's about teaching presence. Presence with ourselves, disconnecting. Well, we teach disconnection, but disconnection from media, disconnection from work, disconnection from all these things where you have that time and you're inside your body, you're by yourself, you're with your emotions. When you are with your children or you are with your family members, you are there with them. Right? Your mind is not here thinking about this project that you need to get done for this quarter, or I have to pay this bill. You're right there in the moment. So it's important that we have those moments of presence. And then moving from apathy and apathy to something where that we care about passionately, to have that purpose, to have that vision, to have that determination. Because if there isn't that bigger picture that's guiding us along the way amidst the challenges, the bumps, the roads, why bother? And one of the things that happens when working with our clients, they say, I've heard this many times, Brother Zeyad, I've tried so many times, why bother? And then I ask them back, why should you bother? Your question is a great question. Why bother? Why should you bother? Why should you care? So we have to demonstrate, or we personally have to have something that we care about personally, that we are fighting for. And when we're fighting for something in our life, it's going to encourage us to, like I said, to keep on going in spite of the bumps along the way. And then moving from misery to joy. If we are miserable, if we are unhappy, and we can only be happy, sometimes we have rules that I can only be happy unless A, B, C, D, E, and a long list of conditions that have to be met before we can finally be happy, or we can finally experience joy. So teaching our members that it's important that you have joy. It's important to experience pleasure, but to do it in a way that is healthy for you. Because I'm working with a medical student, and he says, I have no time at all. I just have to study all the time. I said, okay, how are you meeting your need for pleasure? Or how are you experiencing pleasure? Because in reality, you are spending that time, but it's going towards pornography. It's going towards you wasting time online. So what if we spent that actual time in something that actually brings joy for you, rejuvenates you? We're always going to be seeking pleasure in our life. And I took the brother through these qualities, and it's not to say that he developed all these qualities after 6 months, but just that incremental progress had a huge shift. And I want to share the positive outcome for the father and his family, and share his inspiring message. And here's what he said. He said, things have been going really well with my children. A date with dad has been running now for 6 months, and it's been a great success. The boys really look forward to it, and we've run out of restaurants and places to eat. We always have a really nice chat. We talk about different things, really opening up, and are able to communicate. We've got a really good two-way dialogue going. I really wanted to say thank you for that. A lot of the tips and things you've given to me, I've used it with them. I sit with the boys, and we set goals throughout the day, throughout the week. We discuss it and talk about it and joke about it. I just try to get them more focused and more active, and that's been going well. My eldest son, for him, it's treating him like an adult now and having more manly conversations, which has gone really well. We've discussed issues. I've taken him to work with me, so he's going to see life from a working perspective and now wants to get a job for himself. My second son is a bit of hard work. I'm keeping an eye on him. I think one thing I've learned is that these things don't happen overnight. It takes time, and you've just got to keep at it, and that's been the case with him. And it's not to say that he became, perfect nobody's going to become perfect. It's a journey. And we have to have that aspiration that these little incremental changes can, if we just take the time ourselves to make them, they can have a huge impact on everyone around us. And the message that I want to leave you with here today, it's what we hear whenever we're on an airplane. In the case of an emergency, put an oxygen mask on yourself first before trying to help others. Because if we don't have the oxygen to live, we're not going to be alive to help those that care about us the most. Thank you.
Jazakallahu khairan for sharing your wisdom on a much needed subject that most of us always are curious about or heard about it and maybe shy away from or didn't have a background about it. A couple of things that resonated with me while I was going in and out. The point that you made about it's okay to live in pain but not suffering. Pain could be the drive that makes you work and motivates you to be better. And a lot of us, I believe, myself, whenever anything is painful, we try to get rid of it or we try to stop it or numb it. And it's okay. It's okay to be in pain a little bit but not suffering. That was a great point. The second thing I wanted to say, that most of the time you did not refer to Islam or the Hadith most of the time, or the Quran, and it's very important. When somebody is going through such a problem or such an addiction or such pain, we usually say, just make dhikr or connect to Allah. They can't. They truly are numb or they're stuck, and there's a stuckness. And if there is a painful emotional stuckness, and correct me if I'm wrong, their mind and their spirit won't be able to connect unless that is dealt with and that is removed, or there is a pathway that have been created. So
or they need ayat or a hadith that are relevant to their situation. So just raise your hands and just sit down in the corner and make a dhikr may not be the medicine that they need. So a good doctor will give you the medicine that you need. So an ayah or the story of Musa alayhi salam and facing Fir'aun, idhab ila Fir'auna innahu tagha, carries a huge effect on a person when you think about your inner Fir'aun, your inner Fir'aun that has transgressed. And to be, that Musa alayhi salam was commanded to be gentle with Fir'aun, and that we need to be gentle with dealing with ourselves, perhaps that we may be guided too. So it's not just about, yes, our program is incorporated in Islam in these principles, but we have to find the context and the right message that a person needs to be able to lift their hearts. And Wallahi al-Azim, I think one ayah that's mentioned in any of our content or videos has more effect than an hour of me talking, but it's about the ayah or the hadith or that message being directly to what the heart needs at that moment.
Absolutely. So. The floor is open for questions. Yes. We learn from each other's questions, so please do ask.
How do we know if our child doesn't trust us, and if we think they may not trust us, what are some ways we can build some trust?
So it comes down to what has broken the trust to begin with. So usually our children, if they feel something, it's based off of some reality. If we feel that trust has actually been lost somehow, then address it, talk about it. Say, you know what, I realized that I lost my temper the other day with you, and I was wrong, I'm sorry. But when we ignore things, we let things, fester, or we put them under the rug. I'm the parent. I can never apologize to my kids. I can never make a mistake. That's when that trust is lost. So having the vulnerability to say, I, even as an adult, can make mistakes, and apologizing and acknowledging apologizing for what caused the trust to be lost to begin with. And if it's something like, an ongoing pattern where we never get to go, the parent's not reliable in some way. So the parent needs to take that step back and ensure that they are able to meet the needs. So look at the 6 human needs. Which of the 6 human needs are my child not meeting? And then being able to have an open communication conversation. There's no need to brush it under the rug. You know, any relationship, you have to communicate, you have to actively talk about those things. You know, relationships are messy. They're going to be messy. But, you know, when there is that love together to work through to work through it, that's what allows us to work through, you know, those situations.
One way of knowing that our kids don't trust is that they start making decision by their own. So that's one way of knowing that, okay, because they don't have any trust on us. So then we can ask them that why you are doing this decision about yourself.
Yeah.
My name is Imran Shafi. I'm a psychiatrist.
Yes. And I think you know, so there is that stage when our kids, especially the teenage age, they're going to be making decisions by themselves, and we have to give them that room to make mistakes. But I think it's when they're making decisions and those decisions are leading to really negative outcomes, or decisions where, like, whoa, where did that come from? It's not that those decisions, that major decision that was made that shocked us. The reality is there are little decisions that were made along the way that showed that trust was missing. So thank you for that. So thank you for that comment.
Any more questions? Sorry, we'll go. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum salam.
I have a question. If my kids is addicted to a games, like, should I worry about it, that his next move will be addicted to something like this?
If your kid's what?
Addicted to playing games or video games, all
Yeah.
this.
You know, one of the things that's common today, I mean, again, video games are potentially destructive, right? If a kid is meeting all their needs in video games, if a video games meet those 3 of those 6 needs at a very, very high level at the exclusion of other things, they're not going outside. They're not, you know, they don't have balance, right? I don't think we need to advocate our kids should never play video games. Our kids should never get screen time. But it's about giving that full-rounded experience, and to make sure that their needs are met in other positive ways. Because if all their, you know, there's 4 different ways to think about how to address a vehicle or the quality of a vehicle meeting your needs. The best situation is that vehicle for meeting the needs feels good when we do it. And in reality, it's actually good for us. Others benefit from us when we do it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with that. So, for example, our kid, you know, goes and exercises or participates on a, in a soccer league, and it feels good when they get to play. They enjoy it. You know, they come back and, you know, get that extra energy out. People, you know, at home, the family, you know, is more calm, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes for us to take care of ourselves. The second level is the vehicle initially does not feel good when we do it, but it's actually good for us. And others benefit when we do it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with that. An example of that is, for example, is prayer. Right? Kids may not want to pray, but we tell the Prophet ﷺ said to instruct your kids to pray, because sometimes we have to tell our kids to do something when it's good for them, even when they don't want to do it. Come with me, let's go to the masjid. But over time, this has the ability, because when you actually do it, it does become a level 1 experience where it feels good when you do it. It is good for you, others benefit, so on and so forth. Number 3 is the activity initially feels good, but it's not good for you. It's not good for those around you, and it's not ultimately pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here could be the gray zone of something like video games, right? It feels good when we do it, stimulates the brain, you get into this whole world, but if that moderation is missing, and there isn't that balance in the kid's life, then that's when you can be concerned. But if, alhamdulillah, they're well-rounded, and I'll go to step number 4. Step number 4 is when you do it and it doesn't feel good, it's not good for you, others are harmed, and it's not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Level 3, just like level 2 can become level 1, level 3 can become level 4. Right? So you have to look at the It's not just to nitpick with one thing. You're not going to play video games because I want to. I okay, and Brother Ziyad, and I'll probably hear from your kid or something. But balance. The balance is what we're talking about here.
Like you mentioned earlier that you've been doing this since 2009,
Yeah.
right? So like we never knew about this. So if we do you only cater to Muslim families or even like everybody, the general public, or?
So when I launched this in 2009, I looked at what was out there in the market. There were services catered towards the Christian community, which who are very, very active in terms of addressing pornography addiction. There's general therapy. There's support groups available, but there was nothing available for Muslims. So we catered it, and one of the things as well with the statistics, a lot of the users of pornography are coming from the Muslim world. So we can. I'm sure there would be great benefit if we cater to everyone, but there's a power to a niche as well. When you just focus on one thing and we cater to, alhamdulillah, like I said, we've had 53,000 people utilize our resources, and people from 35 different countries.
And like if somebody needs to get in touch with you, like if I come across somebody who needs help.
Yeah, send them to purifyyourgaze.com.
So they go online? And
Yeah. So it's online, and we've got a very active Facebook page, something like 19,000 followers there. And we have, live Facebook live shows on there, articles. So send them to our website, inshallah. You don't know, it's really funny because, it's not funny, but there was a member in our program, and the wife happened to be on some mailing list, a mommy's mailing list, and someone just randomly passed it on. Right? Passing, you should check out this website, and they were a family that needed it. You don't know, because the statistics out there are that 1 in 12 individuals are affected by pornography addiction. 1 in 12, 1 in 20. And 88% are men, 12% are women. There are people that that are struggling. I know it's uncomfortable to say that. There are family members that that are struggling and are in pain. There are someone you could be praying next to in the musalla could be struggling, right? And this is the sad thing about this addiction is that it's a silent one. It's a silent one, and a lot of people feel that I'm by myself. But part of what we need to do as a community is it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to also heal each individual member of the community. So I invite you all to join us on our page, to share what we're trying to do, because someone that you care about is struggling, and you can help save their life and their family's life.
So purifyyourgaze.com.
Yes.
Jazakallahu khairan.
Yeah.
And Brother Zeyad Ramadan will be with our youth this morning. Jazakallahu khairan.
Jazakallah khair.
So thank you, and we will see you inshallah on the 3rd of December with our new speaker for next month. Please do tell others. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know it's private.